Next up on the show, very happy to bring in two guests who helped me out immensely because while I spend a lot of time studying thoroughbred past performances, I am an absolute novice when it comes to standardbreds. And yet, there are weekends like this very weekend where some of the most interesting stuff that's happening is on the standardbred side. So that is why we have with us today from the In the Money harness side of things, Edison Hatter and Ray Catolo. Boys, how are you?
Doing well. I was actually just posing for my album shot this morning.
It is very, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the very cinematic mood lighting that Ray has going. Are you in 4K over there as well?
Not for your stream because we can't afford to pony up for that amount of pixels, but trust that locally I am harboring more pixels than I can handle.
Edison, how about you? Everything good in your world?
Oh, it's fantastic. Got the first trip ever to Kentucky a couple weeks ago. A beautiful day at Keeneland, a beautiful day at the Red Mile. And, got the standardbred and the thoroughbred action then. And I'm going to really see some thoroughbred and standardbred action over the next two big weekends. We've got Breeders' Crown, Breeders' Cup, both coming up.
Let's start explaining to the thoroughbred audience. We got a lot of new people around here. But is it as simple as the Breeders' Crown is the standardbred equivalent of the Breeders' Cup? Give us an overview of what the event is and tell us what some of the top storylines are heading into this weekend.
One of the more interesting things is that they actually started the same year. 1984, Breeders' Cup, Breeders' Crown, both had their first edition. Breeders' Cup, if I remember right, that was at Hollywood Park, if I remember correctly. And then the Breeders' Crown, it used to be a series where it was at a bunch of different tracks for all these different finals. Like 2-year-olds would be racing at Northfield Park. The open horses would be racing at the Delaware County Fair and then at the Meadowlands. And then slowly, within the last 10 years, it's consolidated into this big championship weekend, pretty much. It was once a championship night for a couple of years. But I imagine the thoroughbred people, too, if you stacked all those Breeders' Cup races onto one card, you'd feel a little bit of fatigue as well. And so Breeders' Crown's been broken up much like Breeders' Cup, where you have the 2-year-olds on Friday, you have the juvenile day, and then Saturday is going to be your sophomores and open ranks. So we divide them just by, the discipline of the horse, the same way that in thoroughbreds, you got your sprinters, you got your long distance runners, and they can really be any age they want for the most part inside of those divisions.
Yeah, Pete, and the other thing that's interesting is obviously yesterday, as we're recording this Thursday morning, Wednesday, we got the Breeders' Cup pre-entries. We, on the standardbred side, kind of have our own version of the pre-entries per se. Last Saturday and Friday at the Meadowlands, there was eliminations. So horses had to enter, go in these eliminations. The top several horses from each elimination will advance to the finals. So that's kind of a unique thing in standardbred racing, and especially for those that might not be super familiar with it, I think it's a good opportunity to, at its base level, we all understand horse racing. If you've already seen these horses race against one another, obviously the ones that won are most likely going to be the favorites. If you can identify somebody who had a bad trip or maybe had a bias go against them or something, it's a good opportunity to come back around and bet them again this week. And again, for new players out there that might not be super familiar with standardbred game, I think it's a real nice advantage for you to be able to see those lines already from these horses last week.
No doubt. I mean, there's a real commonality between the disciplines in terms of the fundamental things that help horses to win races. Another common thread between standardbred players and thoroughbred players, we want winners. And that's what you guys are here to give us, both on the YouTube channel and on the Late Week in the Money Players podcast. Let's start with Friday. Ray, will throw the ball back in your court. Who we betting?
So, unfortunately, I think some of the Breeders' Crown finals, much to Edison's glee, might chalk out. Like the first two, you got a really strong favorite, I think, in Luna Lovegood. Not saying you can't beat her, but just, game recognizing game kind of thing. And it looks good in Lulu, also looks good in the following one. I, though, am looking forward on Friday to the 2-year-old Colton Gelding Pace because traditionally, this race has opened itself up to upsets. Our boy at In the Money, Mike Prebosi, actually was able to catch 65 to one-shot ammo when he beat Confederate 2 years ago at Woodbine Mohawk Park. And so this is a race where you have a bunch of really fast horses, really precocious horses wanting to get out there. And I was really impressed with the horse drawn post 9 in here, Blueprint, who went a real gutsy first over effort. And then you could just see in the stretch when he should have been done, he was still finding. And that's not something you traditionally really see from a lot of 2-year-olds. So that's just really caught my eye and has my focus on him at maybe, hopefully a 9-10 to 1 price inside of a race like that from that draw.
We love those kind of prices, Ray. That's fantastic. Yeah, Mikey P, if you're listening to the podcast side, he's doing the main hosting on the show, gave out a couple of $50 winners the other week. He keeps doing this. I'm going to be out of a job. Edison, who do you like for Friday night?
Well, Pete, I'll see how many different Breeders' Cup references I can make here. And also, I'm sure I know Ray's going to jump in and roll his eyes. It's something I'm going to stay in a bit here on the Friday card. But, Friday is also Future Stars Friday for us. It's the 2-year-olds on display. Same thing, obviously, with the Breeders' Cup. And, I feel like historically on both weekends, I've made some good scores on Fridays more than the Saturdays and the Classic card. So the race 6, Ray, Luna Lovegood. No, it's the 3, Champagne Problems. We have a Taylor Swift song-named horse who comes into this race, received a bye off of the Win and You're In race. Again, we got all these Breeders' Cup references here. So Champagne Problems is the one in race 6. Ray is wrong there. Race 7 looks good in Lulu. I agree with him. That's a horse to knock off. Now, races 8 and 10, where Ray is mistaken here, is that there was bias last week. Last Friday was a daytime card. They raced at 12:30. It was rare. You did not want to be on the front end. There was a front end bias. There are horses that lost on the lead that I'm looking to come back with this week. Namely, Super Chapter in race 8 got beat on the front end. Draws well mid-post. Probably going to be coming from off of the pace this time around. Looking for that one to rebound. 9 to 2 on the morning line. Big chance. And race 10, the 8 Fallout. Another one who got caught late. Got beat. Chance to rebound. Post 8 does have to work from an outside post. But I think all of that helps the price because this one might still be the favorite. Hopefully a little bit of a higher price favorite, though, based on what we saw last week. So that's the Friday thoughts.
I got to make one note on this bias thing, though, before we move on. And it's that if you go and watch the races from Friday, they must have injected anti-bias serum into the dirt or done some kind of weather pattern shift, because this thing Edison is talking about all of a sudden shifted entirely on its head. Because Luna Lovegood romped by like 5 lengths in her elimination going pillar to post. The lead was fine. It's just, you got to remember with 2-year-olds, no matter how good they are sometimes, they don't have that much fight in them just yet. That's something that a lot of horses will find more as a 3-year-old, as an older horse. So if you see, somewhat to Edison's point, you see a horse fold on the lead in the eliminations, maybe come back with them in the final. But it's not because of a bias. It's not. There was no bias last week. There's nothing on how those races went that tells anything of that.
Before we pivot to Saturday, Edison, I have to give you a chance to rebut the rebuttal. I'll be like the moderators on TV. You have 15 seconds.
Well,
we have to fact check ourselves, Pete. We're fact checking ourselves here, and my facts are right.
Ray and I love to disagree with one another on gambling, and the only thing I can say is that I love gambling. It's pari-mutuel. It's my money against his money. If he thinks I'm wrong, then he can go bet against me. And sometimes I'm right. Sometimes he's right. Honestly, if I'm going to be honest, I'll be honest. I'll be nice. He's probably right more often than I am, but I think I am right here.
What was my answer to the bias question? It's that I love gambling.
We'll get some relevant data points Friday night for sure. And I'm sure you guys will pick up this thread of debate when we have those data points on next week's harness show. That's my hope anyway, or, in this space in a time to be determined near you. Let's pivot to Saturday. Edison, we'll keep it with you.
Yeah, so, Saturdays was interesting as well. Again, the Friday eliminations are the Friday finals. The Saturday eliminations, the Saturday finals. Same deal. We have 8 finals on Saturday. We've got the 3-year-olds of all divisions and then all the older horses. Now, the older trotters didn't have any eliminations. They went straight to the final. But for the other divisions, there was eliminations for all of them. And, every week there is the top 10 poll, kind of like the thoroughbred poll that exists, to determine, who the top 10 horses in the sport are right now. And long story short, several of the horses in last week's top 10 were in the eliminations this past week and were defeated one way or another. And, for some of them, I don't think it's concerning. For example, the number 1 rated horse right now is Quimby Joe Fresh. She's an older pacer. She had post 10, elimination. You're not looking to go full out, obviously, with much bigger money on the line this week. So, that's one who I think probably successfully rebounds. 3 Captain Albano. I've been high on this horse for a long time, including last year when he was a 2-year-old. Now he's a 3-year-old. He's up to number 3 in the top 10 poll, and he looked very good in his eliminations. He looked very good in general this year. I think he's finally really becoming that top-level horse I always thought he could. So I like him in the spot. Nijinsky, the number 5 rated horse, that's a horse who lost his elimination. That's also in the same division, though, as Captain Albano. So that's obviously a contentious division, our Glamour boys, those 3-year-old colt pacers. And, it's interesting that number 7, Carl, who obviously was the Hamiltonian winner, he is not racing. He came up sick. There was some concern from the connection. So that potentially changes that race. Although I will say Carl, his last few starts, hasn't quite been that dominant Carl we've seen in the past. But what's interesting is it allows Highland Kismet into the race, who returned back to his braking issues in the elimination, broke in deep stretch, ended up just missing out on the final. With Carl withdrawing, he gets in now, and he draws well with post 4 in that 3-year-old colt trot division. And I mean, he's surely probably going to take some money against that group, but I don't know. That feels like a division now that's kind of become open with the defection of Carl and the addition of Kismet, maybe not on his best right now either. So maybe potentially I'm looking to TCI, I think, is the horse I like there, who was another one with Carl last year's 2-year-old. They were really going head to head as some of the best in the sport, and the TCI, kind of fell off a little bit, but that elimination looked really good for him. So that's probably the best bet for me, Pete, Saturday is TCI. But I guess to shamelessly plug it real quick in here, we'll be having our roundtable tonight for the Breeders' Crown discussion. Ray will be hosting it. We'll talk about the bias. We'll talk about all 12 of the championship races. So I'm sure we'll dig into some more stuff then.
That was on my list of things to plug. For those looking for more, much more, make sure you can check that out. You can watch the live stream on the In the Money Media YouTube channel. You can catch the replay audio only as well. And tips-wise in your rundown there, Edison, you never have to twist my arm to include any horse with Albano in the name as a hunch play for me, 80s wrestling fan that I am. Ray, give us some winners on this Saturday card.
Oh, sorry. I was just having a moment of silence for Carl. I don't know what these Breeders' Crown finals are going to be like, what the sport would be like without him. Captain Albano, I guess, to mention that, he's coming into form at like just the right time. He is such a speed freak that I do feel that his skeleton could push through the skin of his body. And so you got like a spooky season winner potentially in him and that 3-year-old Colton Gelding pace. But the downside is I have the same opinion about the 2-year-olds as I kind of do the Saturday one. There are a lot of strong favorites. Like the open pace by the Missile, now that he's back healthy, as long as he stays sound, he's so much better than those horses. Winner's Bet in the open trot kind of feels that way too, just because so many of the other horses either are stymied by bad draws or are trip dependent, while he can just go to the lead and be faster than everybody else. So my best shot at some prices for this week, for that Saturday card specifically, would be in the 3-year-old filly trot. I don't think Allegiant, one of the elimination winners, is really going to be one of the super favorites. She's going to take some play, but just given where she draws inside of that race, I feel like she can land into a good spot with all of the outside speed that's going to swarm in on her. And if she can make that same type of push that she did to Collar Armelina in the elimination, you might be able to get a 4-1, 9-2 winner on her, just given where else the money should go in that race, with Date Night Hanover likely to rebound, among others. And then the 3-year-old filly pace, I think Caviar Bell also stands an okay chance to return to her form. She's always raced well over the Meadowlands track. She won in one of the stakes earlier this year. It might have been it wasn't the Jerry Silverman Memorial. I can't remember the exact race, but she's usually really good off of a helmet, and she showed a lot of life in her elimination, just getting one of your typical ground-saving trips to see what could happen. And since that she had some vibrancy to her, I think Yannick might try to tip her out, catch some cover, come flying home, and just try to get to the line first. Maybe at like 6-7-1, because that 3-year-old pacing filly division, you go and watch those eliminations, they were cavalry charges down to the line. I don't think there's really anyone in control of that division currently.
It sounds like it's an interesting opportunity to make some money, blend to some favorites, some interesting long shots to throw in. Again, for much more, make sure you check out the longer Breeders' Crown video /podcast, which you can find on the In the Money Media Network. Edison, Ray, thank you guys so much. I look forward to listening to the other show and hearing you fight some more.
I always love to fight, Edison.
I'm leaving you space for the last word, Edison, but you don't want to take it, it doesn't seem.
Well, all Edison has is space. What are you talking about? That's his whole thing.
All right, boys. We'll be catching you soon in other spaces. Appreciate you.